Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has said the latest round of talks with Iran and Switzerland have laid the foundation for a possible final agreement, and that Tehran has agreed to allow nuclear inspectors into the country. Washington has also officially issued a 60-day waiver on Iranian oil sanctions. Korea's consumer sentiment improved for a second straight month in June, rising 0.5 points from May. This was largely driven by strong exports and a rally in the stock market, and followed a sharp 6.9-point jump in May, which marked the biggest monthly gain in a year. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced his resignation, triggering a leadership race for what will be Britain's 7th Prime Minister in the past decade. Major progress in talks between the United States and Iran has been signaled as U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance says Iran has agreed to allow nuclear inspectors back into the country. To facilitate the diplomatic process, Washington has officially issued a 60-day waiver on Iranian oil sanctions. Our Chung Il-im starts us off.
U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance says the latest round of talks with Iran laid the foundation for a possible final agreement, speaking to reporters in Switzerland on Monday.
But look, the fundamental thing we got is, number one, we set up the mechanism to ensure not only the Straits of Hormuz are open, but will stay open. Number two, we actually set up the right mechanism to ensure the regional ceasefire to manage the inevitable conflicts that will come up. We have the Iranians allowing weapons inspectors, nuclear inspectors into their country for the first time in a long time.
Vance said that Tehran has officially agreed to readmit International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, inspectors into the country. However, Tehran pushed back on those claims. Iran Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghai said Tehran's cooperation with the IAEA would continue only under the existing framework. On the economic side of the agreement, the U.S. Treasury has issued a temporary 60-day waiver allowing Iran to sell and deliver oil without sanctions. U.S. President Donald Trump also said any Iranian assets unfrozen under the deal should be used to buy food and other agricultural products from the United States.
If Iran doesn't live up to their agreement, or if they're not behaving, I will do what I have to do.
But the details of those arrangements remain unclear, with technical teams expected to continue negotiations in Switzerland this week. Chung Il-im, Arirang News.
Foreign Minister Cho Hyun met with correspondents on Monday to outline key achievements in Korea's multilateral diplomacy and where it's headed during a globally divisive time. He also shared news of its new task force to support peace in the Middle East. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
Korea has set up a team to support recovery efforts and expand economic cooperation in the Middle East. Foreign Minister Cho Hyun said Monday that the Foreign Ministry has created a team dedicated to comprehensive economic cooperation with Middle East countries.
Even before reports emerged of a possible U.S. Iran deal, the Foreign Ministry started preparing proactively for the post-war period. Even during the conflict, our government showed that Korea is a dependable partner that stands alongside Middle Eastern countries in times of difficulty. Building on that trust, the Foreign Ministry will work closely with relevant agencies to further strengthen and deepen Korea-Middle East relations.
A senior Foreign Ministry official clarified that the task force was not established with any specific Iranian reconstruction fund in mind, but rather to explore broader post-war cooperation, beginning with the 6 Gulf Cooperation Council members and ultimately including Iran as well. The announcement came as Cho wrapped up President Lee Jae-myung's first trip to Europe and the G7 summit in France. Korea, he said, continues its push towards G7+ status as it looks ahead to hosting the G20 summit in 2028.
Korea was invited to a G7 summit for 2 straight years for the first time, reinforcing our status as a globally responsible nation pursuing a G7+ role. It also showed the trust and expectations that G7 countries have toward the Lee Jae-myung administration.
While not a G7 member, Korea joined 7 of the 8 outcome documents adopted at the summit's expanded session, covering issues ranging from development and macroeconomic stability to digital governance, health and migration. The president's trip also produced a number of bilateral outcomes in Belgium, the European Union and Italy, including upgrading bilateral ties with Rome to a special strategic partnership. Minister Chul also highlighted EU's proposal for a new Asia-Pacific cooperation mechanism to strengthen energy supply chains, saying recent global disruptions have exposed the region's vulnerabilities despite its central role in global trade. The diplomatic push continues this week at the Jeju Forum, where Chul is also expected to meet with the Indian Foreign Minister and take part in discussions on international cooperation. The forum will also bring together 5 candidates seeking to become the next United Nations Secretary General, offering a rare opportunity to hear their visions for the future of multilateral cooperation. Woosuyong, Arirang News.
And on the economic front, consumer confidence in South Korea improved for a second straight month in June, supported by strong exports and a rally in the stock market. According to the Bank of Korea this morning, the composite consumer sentiment index rose to 106.6 this month, up 0.5 points from May. That followed a sharp 6.9-point jump in May, which marked the biggest monthly increase in a year and reversed declines seen in March and April. The index has now remained above the 100-point level for 2 consecutive months. A reading above 100 means more consumers are optimistic about the economy than pessimistic, while a figure below 100 indicates the opposite. And as the AI boom sends chipmaker stocks soaring, shares of SK hynix have surged, making it South Korea's largest company by market cap, overtaking Samsung Electronics. For more on the domestic economy, we're joined today by Professor Park Min-jung, professor at the Department of Business Administration at Kumo National Institute of Technology. Professor Park, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having me today.
So this is the first time in almost 3 decades that Samsung Electronics has lost its position as Korea's most valuable company by market cap, right? Is this simply a reflection of the AI-driven semiconductor boom, or does it signal a more fundamental shift in the industry's competitive landscape?
Yeah, the SK hynix rise to the top of South Korea's market capitalization ranking should not be as simplified as a short-term result of the AI semiconductor boom. It also signals a shift in the basis of competition in the semiconductor industry. The immediate driver is clearly the rapid growth of AI server demand and the expansion of the HBM, or high bandwidth memory market. SK hynix has been highly valued because it has secured a strong position in HBM and also built close supply relationships with major AI chip customers such as NVIDIA. More importantly, semiconductor competitiveness is no longer just about production scale and cost efficiency. In the AI era, it increasingly depends on customer co-development, yield stability, advanced packaging, and fast transition to next-generation HBM products. SK hynix has gained strength in these areas. However, this does not only mean Samsung Electronics is in structural decline. Samsung still has a broad portfolio across memory, foundries, system semiconductors, mobile, and customer electronics. Therefore, this change is best understood as a market revaluation of SK hynix leadership in AI memory rather than a permanent change of throne.
I see, and the Kospi climbed above the 9,000-point mark last week and continues a strong rally. So the big question now is whether it can continue to move higher. What are the key risks investors should be watching?
Now, Kospi's move about the 9,000-point level shows strong momentum, but investors should be careful not to see this as a risk-free rally. The upside is still supported by semiconductor earnings expectations, especially around AI memory, HBM, and global chip demand. However, there are some risks to watch that. The first is earnings risk. If upcoming semiconductor results, including global indicators such as Micron's earnings, fail to confirm strong AI-related demand, the market could quickly lose momentum. And also perspective of macro risk, especially U.S. inflation and interest rates. If U.S. inflation remains sticky, expectations for rate cuts may weaken, or rate hike concerns could return. That would pressure high-growth technology stocks. and also market concentration. The recent Kospi rally has been heavily led by large semiconductor names, while many other sectors have lagged behind. This means the index may look strong, but the market breadth is relatively narrow. So the Kospi can move higher if semiconductor earnings remain strong and U.S. inflation data are favorable. But investors should watch for disappointment in chip earnings, higher for longer interest rates, and excessive concentration in a few AI-related stocks.
All right, in the foreign exchange market, the Korean won reached its weakest level against the dollar since the 1998 financial crisis. What's driving the Korean won's weakness, and is there any sign of relief ahead?
The weakness of the Korean won is being driven by both external and domestic factors. Externally, the U.S. dollar remains strong because inflation concerns have kept the Federal Reserve cautious about cutting interest rates. As long as U.S. rates stay high, capital tends to flow toward dollar assets, putting pressure on Asian currencies, including the Korean won. Domestically, Korea is also facing pressure from foreign investor outflows and concerns over import costs, especially energy. Even though Korea's semiconductor exports are improving, that has not been enough to fully offset the broader pressure from a strong dollar and global risk aversion. So there are some possible signs of relief. If U.S. inflation starts to ease and Federal becomes more open to rate cuts, the dollar could weaken. And also stronger semiconductor exports could also support Korea's trade balance and help stabilize the won. However, relief is likely to be gradual rather than immediate. Investors should watch three things closely: U.S. inflation data, the Federal's policy signals, and also whether the Korea's export recovery becomes broad enough to attract stable capital inflows.
I see. And more broadly, global oil prices have dropped after the U.S. and Iran signed the preliminary ceasefire deal. Yet fuel prices in Korea remain still very high. Why is this, and when can we expect prices to go down?
The reason Korean fuel prices remain high despite the sharp drop in global oil prices is mainly due to a time lag and the structure of domestic fuel pricing. First, the international oil prices do not immediately translate into pump prices. It usually takes about 2 to 3 weeks for changes in crude oil prices to be reflected in domestic retail fuel prices. Refineries and gas stations are still selling fuel that was purchased or refined when oil prices were higher. Also, the Korean fuel prices include a large fixed component such as taxes, distribution costs, and refining margins. So even when crude oil prices fall sharply, the final retail price does not fall by the same percentage. So fuel prices in Korea may begin to ease gradually over the next few weeks if lower oil prices remain stable. But a sharp and immediate drop is unlikely. So the consumers should expect a delayed and partial decline, not a one-to-one reflection of the fall in global oil prices.
I see. I guess we'll have to wait and see how that goes. All right, Professor Park, thank you so much for your time and insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced his resignation, setting off a leadership race that could bring Britain its 7th leader in a decade. Former Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham has emerged as an early contender to succeed Starmer as leader of the Labour Party. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced Monday that he will step down, triggering a leadership contest that could make Britain's next Prime Minister its seventh in the past decade.
Every decision I've taken has been about putting the country I love first. That is why I will resign as leader of the Labour Party.
Starmer said he would remain in office until a successor is chosen, with a new leader expected to be in place before Parliament returns in September. Nominations for the leadership race will open on July 9th. The resignation comes less than 2 years after Starmer led his party to a landslide election victory, when he promised stability after years of political turmoil. In his announcement, Starmer acknowledged growing pressure from within his own party and said it had become clear that many members wanted new leadership. Attention is now turning to potential successors. Former Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham formally took his seat in the House of Commons on Monday after being sworn in as the Member of Parliament for Makerfield. Burnham confirmed he intends to run for the Labour Party leadership and position himself as a candidate to become Britain's next Prime Minister. The political shakeup also drew reaction from abroad. U.S. President Donald Trump said Starmer had hurt himself very badly through his policies on energy and immigration. Speaking at the White House on Monday, Trump criticized the British government's approach to North Sea oil development, arguing that restrictions on domestic production weakened the country's energy position.
I was critical only from the set because I think he's a lovely man, but I said you're really messing up energy. You have windmills all over the place. In the meantime, you have the North Sea oil, and they won't let anybody drill. And he's really hurt himself very, very badly.
Trump also pointed to immigration and crime as major political challenges that he said had damaged Starmer's standing with voters. Despite the criticism, Trump described Starmer as a friend and praised him personally, while maintaining that policy decisions ultimately led to his downfall. Starmer's resignation follows months of mounting political pressure, with energy policy, economic concerns, and immigration emerging as key issues in the debate over his leadership and the future direction of the British government. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
K-beauty's popularity in France is creating new opportunities for Korean companies, with even smaller brands finding growing success in the market. Our culture correspondent Park Go-no reports from Paris.
French consumers no longer need a luxury French label to catch their attention. Increasingly, they're seeking out beauty products marked Made in Korea, waiting in long lines and even rearranging their whole day for them. That was evident throughout Korea Expo 2026, held in Paris last week.
Yeah. She missed her internship to come here, so we are really excited. Yeah. We see like all the Koreans have like perfect skin. Yeah.
That enthusiasm was visible throughout the venue. So here at the K-Beauty Zone, visitors aren't just stopping by for a quick look. They test products, collect samples, and even leave with full shopping bags. K-Beauty here in France is going beyond curiosity and is leading to actual consumer demand. Thousands of visitors spent the day sampling products and learning skincare routines inspired by Korea at hundreds of booths. And exhibitors say the enthusiasm is no longer just about trends.
Many visitors arrive already knowing a great deal about Korean beauty products, so they come to experience them firsthand, often making purchases right there and then.
Beyond on-site sales, organizers are also helping participating companies expand into the French market by subsidizing exhibition costs and arranging meetings with potential buyers.
Each year, more locals and buyers attend the events and get matched with participating companies. Small to mid-sized companies have even gone on to enter major French retail channels, including department stores, helping them significantly expand their business. These success stories continue to grow each year.
Organizers say their goal is not simply to promote Korean products, but to help them become part of everyday life in France, as demand for Korean brands continues to grow. Park Go-no, Arirang News, Paris.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. Economic maestro Alan Greenspan, the long-serving Federal Reserve chairman, has died at age 100. His wife announced on Monday that he died at home from complications of Parkinson's disease. Greenspan led the U.S. Central Bank from 1987 to 2006, the second longest tenure in its history, which included a decade of uninterrupted growth. His reputation suffered after he left office when the housing bubble of his final years collapsed into the 2007 crisis. Alan Greenspan judged correctly in the mid-1990s that a surge in worker productivity would keep inflation in check, and he let the economy keep growing rather than raising rates against a threat that never arrived. Policymakers such as current Fed Chair Kevin Warsh have cited that decision as proof that judgment can sometimes beat economic models. In Canada, a shooting in Montreal on Monday left 3 dead, including a suspected gunman. A police officer and a civilian were killed, and at least 1 bystander was slightly injured. A long gun was recovered at the scene, and according to Radio Canada, the shooter distributed a violent manifesto targeting women. The shooting unfolded in the city's Côte-de-Neige neighborhood, where police warned residents to stay indoors and avoid the area for much of the afternoon. Prime Minister Mark Carney offered condolences and praised the officers who responded. The Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo has now infected more than 1,000 people and reached the 3rd displacement camp, where an 18-month-old girl has died. The toddler ran a fever for over a week and was carried on foot between 2 health centers before being tested. She died before her positive result returned, exposing at least 107 contacts. Health officials say they lack enough facilities to isolate patients from crowded camps. Congo's government put the confirmed death toll at 254, more than a month after declaring the outbreak of the rare Bundibugyo strain. Nearly a fifth of confirmed cases are children. Experts warn the outbreak could eventually exceed the West Africa epidemic that killed more than 11,000 people a decade ago. Argentina footballer Lionel Messi has become the all-time leading scorer in World Cup history. Messi scored his 17th and 18th World Cup goals on Monday as defending champions Argentina beat Austria by 2-0 to reach the knockout stage. Those goals moved him above Germany's Miroslav Klose as the World Cup's all-time top scorer. He scored his first in open play and added a second in stoppage time after earlier missing a penalty. Messi, who turns 39 this week, has now found the net in 6 straight World Cup matches and scored all 5 of his side's goals at this tournament. The record came 40 years to the day after Diego Maradona's goal of the century against England at the 1986 World Cup.
The capital woke up to a beautiful morning with clear blue skies and plenty of sunshine. Even though temperatures will not be that extreme, the sunshine will be still intense. Most of the central regions will see very high UV levels in an extreme category for parts of Chungcheongdo and Gyeongsangdo provinces. So sunscreen, hats, and sunglasses are highly recommended. Meanwhile, rain is forecast for Jeju all day today. Up to 60 millimeters of showers are expected through tomorrow, while south and east coast could see some spotty rain. And this afternoon, temperatures will climb quickly through the afternoon, especially across western regions. Seoul will be getting up to 30 degrees Celsius, Gwangju at 28 degrees, but Daegu, Gyeongju, Busan will be a lot more comfortable at 24 degrees. Then classic early summer weather will continue with a chance of scattered showers on Thursday across parts of the country.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.